Hey, what is going on, Dr. Dave?
What is going on, Dr. Joe?
I'm not going to tell you just yet, right? So
Of
we're on here
course not. Of
meeting.
course not.
So thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, where David said it, I have said it, that we are here trying to assist you in your journeys, as well as us in our journeys too. We're still on our own paths, somewhat similarly entwined or overlapping, hence this podcast and other projects that we work together. But we're on a journey just like you are. So thanks
Absolutely.
for tuning in. If this is your first time, thanks for uh, coming to our episode, whether you're viewing it on YouTube or listening on the other platforms. We just appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to tune into our shenanigans. So thanks. And for all of our returning
That's a great way to put
audience,
it, Joe.
thank you.
Shenanigans.
Hopefully, we don't discourage you from coming back to participate in other episodes. But thanks for coming. All right, so just like in normal fashion, the way we do things, we one of us will start off introductions, and then the other will jump us right into our topic. So today, our topic is what is next, right? What does that mean? What is next? What is next for you? What is next for Dave? What is next for me? What is next? So I will go ahead and hand it off to Dr. Dave.
Oh, what is next for me? Oh, okay, okay. I get it. Oh, I'm tracking
Or
now.
for
Okay.
in general
In
terms, what
general
is
terms,
next? What does that
what
mean?
is next? Well, I guess what is really next is for me to start talking about what is next. So, with that, that's it. Joe and I have been talking offline about several topics. We have our wish list established, or our to-do list, and what is next is that what is next. So, what is meant by what is next? What is next can mean a lot of things, like so many of the topics that we discuss. They can be very interwoven, and it is what is next, because once you make a decision or think about something, what is the next step? So really, it's a progression. And once you've made that decision and commitment, what is next is oftentimes taking some form of action. Or what is next could be, what is your next thought? What is your next idea? What is your next dream? What is your next ambition? What is your next hobby, career, um, industry, home, whether you're moving or not moving? What is your next vehicle? So, what is next? That is an awesome question. And I love the idea of what is next, because it really causes us to challenge ourselves, as we love to talk about, to critically reflect upon ourselves, because we don't know
Yeah.
what's next until we really reflect and understand and decide what is next for us. So, for us, or for me, what is next is to talk about this topic. What is next after that is, what other topics can we explore? What is next after that is, how can we integrate these thoughts and ideas to help others benefit from our ideas and thoughts? As we pull that into a personal or professional environment, let's start off with personal. What is next for me personally? It depends. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a trip? Are we talking about the next time I'm going to spend time with family or parents or children or relatives? Is it, hey, what is next? I need to go out and change the laundry or pull weeds in the yard or mow the grass. What is next? It comes down to priorities, I believe. You have to prioritize what you want to do, whatever that next is. Next is air quotes for the listeners, not the viewers, because the viewers can see me doing my little finger air quotes. What is next is up to you. And you have to think about this, because your choice of what you're going to do next will affect the direction and the potential outcomes. So, what is next? You also have to think about, what is your plan? Again, things that we've talked about before. What is your plan? What are your ambitions? What are your dreams? What are your goals? This question is like the proverbial, or the five whys, or peeling back the onion. You have to think about what you want to do and where you want to go. You have to have that direction before you can even start answering that question of what is next. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I'm going to hand this hot potato back over to Joe and see if he can make French fries out of them or potato wedges.
Well, like you said, Dave, this is really an open-ended question. What is next? Because it could pertain to a lot of different things. You know, what
Absolutely.
is next in your career? What is next in your personal life? You know, your career choices,
Relationships,
whether you're
whatever.
going on vacation. So, this what if is a really wide open topic. But I like to go back to something you mentioned again, which we mention on every one of our episodes, is the idea that you have to do that self reflection, that you have to kind of determine where you are and then where you'd like to go, whether it's in your
Mm,
career, whether it's in your personal life, or whatever it is. The case is, it still comes down to evaluating where you are. You can't go,
absolutely.
or you can go to the next thing, but it could be challenging. Again, we've thrown this, you know, simile out there many times, and that's, you know, jumping in a car because you want to go to the East Coast or you want to go to, say, Florida, but you haven't determined that that's your next stop or
Yeah.
destination. You just say, "Hey, I'm going to start driving east," but you haven't defined that destination. So you'll get east, but where you end up on the East Coast is it could be, you know, whichever route you choose, which freeway or which highway
It
system
could
you
be in the
choose.
middle of the ocean someplace you
Absolutely, you
completely
could
did
keep
not
going.
expect or anticipate.
Exactly. So when you think about that, what is next? It really still has to come down to you making that conscious choice to determine what is next for you. Like I say, if it's in your career, if you're at a point in your career where you're like, okay, well, I've been doing this a lot of years, I'm ready to try something new or to advance. So say you're been a technical expert, subject matter expert in a particular field, and you want what's next for you, defined as a management or leadership position that you'd like to lead a team now in that
Mhm.
same area. So then you start to think, okay, that's next for me. How do I get there? How do I get to that level? And so that's when, and Dave said it, that planning exercise becomes very important. Setting those goals. Okay, so I want to go from point A to point B. So I have my starting point defined and my destination where I want to end up defined. Now I just need to figure out how I'm going to get there. And so you eliminate a lot of that indecision or, you know,
Mhm.
not knowing where you're going to land because you've defined it. And so now it's up to you to determine how you're going to get there. And that's going to be the part where the journey starts,
Mhm.
whether you go right, left, straight forward. But you do have an idea because you have an end state. And whether, you know, you may have a timeline that says you want to be there in a year, you may not get there in that timeline. But
Yeah.
what's the most important is you have a destination. And I think if we think about what's next or what is next, it's that definition of where you want to be or the identity of where you're trying to go. But like Dave
Yeah.
said, it all starts with that critical self-reflection. And I see you
Yeah,
trying to
Joe.
jump in there,
Yeah,
Dave.
and I just love. I always love when you bring up the analogy of just jumping in the car and driving, and then
Yeah,
hoping to hit your target or hoping
right.
to
Yeah.
hit your destination without knowing what that destination is. And that to me is like having a road map with roads but no cities on them and no states or outlines. It's just roads.
Right.
And if you're in an unfamiliar area, the roads mean nothing except just different directions, but you never know where they're going to take you. And that can be good in some ways because maybe you're trying something new, completely out of nowhere. You want to try underwater basket weaving in the desert Southwest because that's what people do in the desert, right? They swim in underwater. But with that, it is helpful to know what destinations are out there so you just don't run into these things. You know, you don't drive off of a cliff. You actually go and reach a destination, a city, a location
Right.
to explore. And I think there's a lot of validity to that into what is next because to your point, those goals, that roadmap, there's more than one road that you can take to get to that city. It's just what kind of journey do you want and what type of experiences do you want? So when we say what is next, it can be a question or it can be a statement. What is next is, and then you fill in that blank. What
Right.
is
Yep.
next is this for me. I'm not asking a question. I'm stating this is what is next for me. And that
Right.
knowing yourself is key. And you can only get that knowing yourself through that critical self-reflection. We're not necessarily condoning, meditation and all this other things, although those are great exercises. What we're saying is to focus on you and understand you as a person. And as much as Joe and I say we understand ourselves, we still don't understand ourselves because things are always changing. Things are always in a
Right.
state of flux. Today is different from yesterday. Tomorrow is going to be different from today. It's not going to be exactly the same because it is what it is. But understanding that and contemplating that and understanding how we as individuals, as ourselves, fit into that picture is going to help us ask the question, what is next? And answer the question, what is next? So it's not a question followed by a question, it's a question followed by an answer. And that answer can only be determined by understanding us as our individual selves, as ourselves, our true selves, and saying, hey, I love my job when you don't love your job, or I
Right.
love
Right.
this car or this city when you don't love that car or that
Right.
city. So you have to be absolutely honest with yourself when you're asking yourself, what is next? Is it a school? Is it college? Is it a trade? Is it a career? Is it a relationship? Is it a city, a location, just a state of mind? Are you in the
Right.
right state of mind for yourself? So,
So,
Joe.
so Dave, you bring up a very good point, and I think you were alluding to it, but didn't actually say it. And the more you do that critical self reflection and evaluation, it leads to self awareness.
There you go.
And
Absolutely.
that's really what you were explaining. The more you know about yourself, your likes, dislikes, and who you really are, is going to help with deciding what is next for you, right? Like you
Absolutely.
said, you can say, hey, this is a great job, but really not, that's really not the way you feel. And
Mhm.
the quicker you realize that and are true to yourself, the quicker you're going to make that decision to say, okay, so I say I like my job, but I really don't. My next is I'm going to get a different job. I'm
Mhm.
going to move to a new organization, whatever that is. But the quicker you accept, who you are, and become self-aware that that this is not who you want to be, or
Mhm.
and we've talked about this topic before, remaining true to yourself.
Yeah.
That is what this leads to. If you really accept that, embrace that, then you're going to be better able to define what is next for you. Like I
Mhm.
said, what is, and then fill in whatever that topic is for you, or whatever
And
that
that what is
destination
next
is for you.
might be just that self-awareness. What is
Absolutely.
next?
Yep.
Self-awareness for myself. I need to
Yep.
be more self-aware. I need to be more true to myself. I need to be more honest with myself because I might be extremely adept and skilled at what I'm currently doing, either personally or professionally. But if it's not what I want to be doing and it does not bring me joy and happiness, are you really being honest with yourself? And now there
Right.
might be
Yep.
reasons for that. Most of us have bills to pay and that sort of thing, and responsibilities to our family, or maybe not. Maybe we're just by ourselves. We're, doing what we need to do, but there's still a certain amount of responsibility that we need to maintain. So you have to take that into consideration as part of that self-awareness. Sometimes we have to do things that we don't necessarily enjoy so that we can get to what
Abs-
is next.
Yep. And
And
that's,
that
yeah,
what is next
absolutely
might be, hey, I need to learn how to do this better. And then once I get to that state of better, what is the next step in line
right.
with that? Maybe it's
Yep.
getting the next level of expertise. Maybe it's just maintaining for a while so you can rest and catch your breath, which is also very important. You have to, what is next? Sometimes rest is
Right.
next.
Yep.
You have to recharge those batteries. We are not machines. We cannot, you can't just plug us into a wall and just let us keep running. It doesn't work that way. We have a
Well,
limited amount of resources internally.
Well, one, and it goes back to what I just said, that self awareness piece.
Yeah.
Once you really start to understand who you are, your capabilities, your strengths, your weaknesses, or areas of opportunities, then you're better able and equipped to make those decisions about
Mhm.
what is next. And you're right, it may be that I've been burning the candle at both ends, and it's time for me to take a break or a
Mhm.
pause. But again, you go into that understanding that that's what you need at this point in time. You could be at the top of the world or the top of your game, whatever that is, but then also realize, you know what, maybe I need to slow down and take a step back for a brief period of
Or
time. But
maybe just enjoy the moments or
absolutely,
moments,
and
because a lot of
we
times people forget that.
well, we both have talked about that, or, how we were so focused on certain things that we let some of those, like even our accomplishments. Like for me, I didn't even walk across the stage until I earned my doctorate degree. I kept looking at, instead of celebrating that,
Yeah.
milestone that I had reached in my career, even the associates, the bachelor's, the master's, I didn't do that. I kept putting it off until that final stage where in some case, like in your case, I think you said you celebrated at each level and I didn't, which now I wish I would have, taken fully acknowledged all of those milestones that I reached. And so that's what, I wasn't completely self-aware of where I was
Yeah.
trying to go or who I was. And now that I've had that time to reflect, now I realize those were very important moments that I should have acknowledged and celebrated and really been focused on. So, if I could go back and do that over, that's one of the things I would have done. But it's
Mhm.
taken me, like we've talked about, being more self aware and being true to myself and understanding those things. That now I do understand that. And we just did our topic, episode or so ago about never too late.
Mhm.
So again, even though I'm at this point in my career, time in my life, it's still never too late to go back and really think about and really highlight those accomplishments that I've had in my life. So, because they are who I am today,
Mhm.
and they'll be continue to be part of whatever I do next. And
Mhm.
so that's what's important. I think Dave said sometimes take a step back and take a look at all those accomplishments that you achieved, and really think about where you are today, and that'll help you with defining what is next.
Mhm.
Because me and Dave have had this conversation offline about not having to redefine ourselves or define ourselves to others,
Mhm.
where in their case they're looking at us like, no, this can't be, or those credentials, they can't be true. But the reality is we've lived them. And so us knowing that and being confident and comfortable with that gives us that self-awareness piece that we don't have to define ourselves to you, or continue to define just to make you feel better. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. You said a lot of, again, many important things about self-awareness, and I think another way to kind of view this is kind of like the Goldilocks principle. Have I done enough? Have I done too much? Or have I done just the right
right,
amount?
right, yeah,
Not for other people,
yep,
for me,
for yourself, yep,
because it is unfair to compare yourself to other people, because
right,
we, again, as we've mentioned many times, we don't know their journey and they don't know our journey. And everyone's journey is unique, hence the
yep.
journeys of not so ordinary people. That is a deliberate, there's deliberateness to that. And when we start thinking about that self-awareness and what is that next step, we have to ask ourselves, have we done enough? Have we done too much? Or have we done just the right amount? Because that will determine what that next step is. If we haven't done enough, maybe we need to do a little bit more. If we've done too much, maybe we need to back off a little bit. If we've done just the right amount, maybe we just keep going down that path, because it's enabling us to do the things that we want to do and need to do. Or maybe, again, it's just that time for rest, relaxation, recharging our batteries, and to do a little bit of reflection.
You brought up a very good point, and I think the emphasis we probably haven't placed the emphasis on that, except for in early episodes. But the idea that you define what that is, you
Mm-hmm.
define what success is to you.
Yeah.
So your determination of whether you've done enough, you've done too much, or you haven't, you're doing just the bare minimum. That still should be your decision. It
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be somebody else telling you, "Hey, you're not doing enough." Or so that I think that's very important that we've defined that for ourselves. Like you say,
Mm-hmm.
the things that we've accomplished in our lives, people still may look at it as, oh, that's not a big deal, and it may not be a big deal for them, but for us, we define that as a big
Yeah.
deal. And so, by the same token, we can't really expect others to define it that way for us. Like I said, we would
Correct.
both achieve, our doctorate degree, but in some people's eyes, that's not a big deal.
That's not an
So,
issue. Yeah, it's not a big
right.
deal.
So, but we also should, still be cognizant
Cognizant.
of
Yeah.
them not reflecting the same position or having that same thought that that's important. So
Mhm.
but that's important that we define it ourselves and not allow somebody else to define that for us. So if
Yeah.
we choose, I've had this conversation with my younger son, uh I think it was my oldest son, actually playing in a basketball game, and halftime he was like, he was crying, and I was like, why are you crying? And he's like, well, I'm doing everything I can, but we're still losing, or we're still doing. I said, you know what? It's not about that. I said, do you feel like you're doing everything you can to win? He said, yes. And I said, well, that's it.
That's it.
Then
That's all you
that's
can
all
do.
I can ask from you. I can't, ask you to do any more than that you're doing your best. So I said, that's all I need from you is that you give your 100%. And he walked away feeling much better.
Yeah.
So
And
his
and your story, I'm going to interrupt for just a moment.
yeah,
It reminded me to remember that we each have our own individual starting points.
right, right,
And that's what helps us define whether we've given enough or whether we can
yeah,
still push a little bit more to the point of piggybacking on your point that you just the story about you what you just told. It's like not all of us can start out being pro athletes and become elite pro athletes. Some of us start at the very bottom,
right,
and maybe the most successful we're going to be is just an amateur athlete, but the distance that we've covered might be 10 times further than someone else has covered. So
absolutely,
we
yeah,
cannot say that we have failed until we've actually looked at and celebrated the journey that we've taken,
right, yeah,
at which point it becomes a redundant question and statement, because that means what you'll realize that none of us have really truly failed, because every one of our journeys is different.
right,
Some people have more painful journeys, some people have easier journeys, some people have journeys that take them to different countries, some people's journeys are in just one small location. One is not better than the other. There are individual journeys, and how we accept them, accept our own journey through that critical self-reflection, is going to determine how we feel about ourselves and what we believe the next step should be.
You mentioned something again is very important, is the fact that we don't compare ourselves to others. And I think, like you said, we define our own journeys because we start at different points. And so to compare yourself to someone else's journey is unfair because you don't know the backstory. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it's taken for them to get to that point. And so the only thing you can control, the only thing that, is completely transparent to you is your own journey. And so to try and compare yourselves or to evaluate yourself based on someone else's progression is unfair to yourself. And you'll always feel like it's not enough or you're behind if you do that throughout your journey, comparing it to someone else's. So
Mm-hmm.
just back to that that point that I made earlier is defining your own level of success, what that means to you, and reacting and responding that way, not based on someone else's journey or someone else's suggestions or recommendations. It's still your journey, and you choose when it's you've done enough, you haven't done enough, or those things. So it still goes back to that self-awareness piece, that critical self-reflection, all those things that we've talked about in this episode. So with that, Dave, I want to give you few minutes to go ahead and summarize, if you'd like to, on what we just talked about. What is next?
Yeah, and thanks, Joe. I think I've enjoyed this session, an episode. I just want to put back out there that, what is next may be to do nothing. We don't always
Right.
have to be going forward or backward or sideways. We don't have to always be in that go or on mode. Sometimes, again, what is next is to just pause, pump the
Yep.
brakes, if you will, coast for a little while, get your energy level back, get your head in the right space, and keep pressing forward or just pausing. And why do I say that? Because at some point, we're going to have to decide at some point in our life, earlier or later on, that enough is enough, or we've our fun meter is pegged, if you will, or hey, we've done this. I've done this to as much or as great as I want to. I want to try something different. And what that next might be is either rest or something different, or maybe it's the same. So think about it. Think about yourself. Think about what you want, what brings you joy and happiness, and pursue those things, because those things are probably going to be that next step for you.
Thanks for that, Dave. And I won't belabor us any longer, but I do just want to highlight a couple of things when we think about what is next. It is a huge generic term, but the more you do that self evaluation and self reflection, the more you're going to be self aware and determining what that next is for you. And Dave said it. It could just be a matter of taking time off or taking a break, doing more evaluation and reflection. But it still comes back to the fact that your next is your next. Whatever that is for you, it should be determined by you, not by any outside or external sources. And sure, some of those things should weigh heavily on your decision and some things shouldn't. But ultimately, it's your next. So I just want people to keep that in mind, that it's all about you and not about what people expect from you. And those things are, you're relying on other people's decisions and comments and recommendations, all those things. Again, take those into consideration. But the bottom line is it's your next, whether it's moving, propelling forward, or just pausing. So with that, we want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. Myself and Dave, we really enjoy being on this platform and just talking about things that hopefully you want to hear. So again, if this is your first time, thanks for tuning in. If you got something out of this, great, leave us a comment. Our information is in the description, or if there's topics you want us to talk about, let us know. Or if this is not for you, but you feel there may be somebody out there that might want some of this information or need this information, feel free to share, help us out. Again, we are going to continue to do this because we enjoy doing it. So
Absolutely.
as we started out with, we're all on a journey. So we're just happy to be part of your journey. And thanks again for tuning in with us today. With that, I'll just end with our common phrase, and that is, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.